Welcome to Distance Learning, teaching using interactive technologies. By the end of this session, you will be able to explain how an interactive technology classroom is different from a face-to-face classroom. Understand how to manage audio-video compression time while teaching. Adapt your teaching to address the additional layer of complexity when using interactive technology. A faculty member selected to teach using interactive technology is expected to complete distance learning training prior to course delivery. Outside of this session, training may also include observation of another distance learning course in progress and working with a mentor on campus to learn how to use the equipment. Notify the appropriate campus officials of questions or concerns related to the course as a distance learning offering. This may include, but is not necessarily limited to, requests to clarify or troubleshoot issues involving the use of technology. Communicate with students about the expectations of the course, including details regarding distance learning as a mode of delivery. Post your presentation and all additional materials you will use for class activities on Blackboard before the class session begins. Distance learning at Baker College mirrors the definition as outlined by the Higher Learning Commission in 2014, which states, distance education course means education that uses one or more of the following technologies to deliver instruction to students who are separated from the instructor and to support regular and substantive interaction between the students and the instructor, synchronously or asynchronously. The technologies used may include the internet, one-way and two-way transmissions through open broadcasts, closed circuit, cable, microwave, broadband lines, fiber optics, satellite or wireless communication devices, audio conferencing or video cassettes, DVDs, and CD-ROMs if the video cassettes, DVDs, or CD-ROMs are used in conjunction with any of the technologies listed above. Distance learning is an all-encompassing term that is applied to a wide variety of course delivery tools. Interactive technology is just one of many. In an interactive technology class, students are able to talk to the instructor, ask questions, and participate in live class discussions and activities. Video monitors, cameras, and microphones in every classroom allow immediate interaction and allow all participants to share and collaborate on the same projects. Of all the distance teaching technologies, interactive technology is the most similar to face-to-face classroom instruction. There are, however, a few key differences in the teaching and learning process that require attention for faculty and students to use interactive technology successfully. Active learning is a widely used pedagogy in face-to-face classrooms and can be adopted effectively in an interactive technology classroom. Active learning strategies will do more to engage students in the content than strategies based on students sitting in a remote site watching the faculty member talking on a screen. The technology used for classroom interaction between the sites is important, but is only part of the whole learning experience. It needs to be combined with appropriate knowledge, teaching and learning strategies, and assessment. Though many of the same teaching strategies you use in a face-to-face classroom easily transition to interactive technology classrooms, interactive technologies requires far more structured planning. Let's explore this a little more. In planning an interactive video class, it is important to consider the following issues. Additional training is needed to manage interactive technology classrooms. It is important that you feel comfortable with the technology. Practice, practice, practice is always a great suggestion to help you become more comfortable with the technology. The pace of teaching is slower due to the video-audio compression delay of 1 to 2 seconds. This delay has the potential to decrease the actual time you have for content and discussion. More structure is required when planning sessions. In an interactive technology classroom, poor teaching and/or poor planning is amplified and becomes very obvious. We will review how you can be ready for each class session. There is an added layer of complexity. Visual cues students provide are not as transparent. Video etiquette is needed so time is not wasted, and what to wear when you teach in an interactive technology format are all important issues. In planning your course, it is important to develop materials that keep students across campuses engaged and feeling included. Occasional technical issues may interrupt video connections. Technology is awesome, but what happens when it isn't working? You need to make sure you always have a plan B. Let's take a look at these considerations a little more in depth. A properly trained instructor is the key to a successful distance learning experience. The role of system IT will be limited to implementation and technical support of approved equipment and software to deliver the curriculum. System IT staff do not fill the role of proctor for the course and do not train individuals on how to use the equipment. The instructor establishes and maintains the distance learning connection and will perform initial troubleshooting of any problems encountered with the software or hardware. When teaching with interactive technology, there is a 1 to 2 second delay between what is said and what is heard at the other site. You will want to plan how to address this issue while teaching. A few tips for teaching with the delay are as follows. At the beginning of class, remind students that audio-video delays of 1 to 2 seconds are common due to the way audio and video are compressed. Conclude each bit of instructional talk with a succinct summary statement. Make a decision about how you want students to ask questions. Simply telling them to ask questions whenever they want to could result in never getting any questions. Or both sides may be asking questions at the same time, which will cut off one of the sites and increase the audio-video delay. One suggestion is that you ask students to hold or even write down questions as they think of them. Then pause after each segment of your lecture to poll each site individually and ask for questions. Remember to focus on students, not the delivery tool. It is important to remember to focus on all students, not just students at the home site. Think of the camera as another student. Look directly into the camera periodically. Do not avoid it. More structure is required when you are planning an interactive technology class session. Effective teaching becomes more the result of preparation than anything else. The presentation of course material becomes the focus of planning as the core content of the class remains unchanged regardless of the delivery format. The reason preparation and organization is so important is that while interactive video is a great way to deliver a class to various sites, as mentioned earlier, one downside is that it amplifies poor teaching styles, planning, and strategies. Keep in mind that the information you are presenting not only needs to be clear in your mind, but your handouts, slides, and presentation need to be in a clear and logical sequence. Trying to communicate unorganized information will only lead to confusion and loss of time. A thorough plan using Baker College's Instructional Learning Plan will help you design a course with an easy flow that assists you in coaching, facilitating, and assisting students in the learning process. The Instructional Learning Plan will help you define clear objectives for class sessions and will assist you in planning strategies to facilitate student learning. It is your responsibility as the instructor to ensure that all of your students are engaged in quality learning activities for the entire class period. Some potential activities include brainstorming, case studies, debates, demonstrations, guest speaker, interview, lecture, role play, writing activities, small group discussion, or a quick quiz. Added layer of complexity. Interactive technology etiquette, what to wear when you teach an interactive technology class, visual cues, and site integration are all important because the lack of attention to these items adds time to the audio-video compression time as well as lowers the level of student learning. Let's review how you can easily integrate a few approaches to assist in limiting the compression time delay and improve student learning. When teaching via interactive technology, it is to your advantage to clearly establish how class sessions will be run. Baker College Interactive Technology Etiquette for faculty and students has been established and is a very important part of this discussion. Though some of the etiquette seems common sense, it is key to your success in teaching via interactive technologies. The issues noted in these two guidelines will add time to your audio-video delays if not followed. Side conversations, cell phones, unmuted microphones, quick body movements, bright or busy patterns in your clothing, and big jewelry will all add to the audio-video compression time. In a face-to-face classroom, we watch for facial expressions and body language to assess if students are bored, tired, confused, or thinking through an idea. These visual cues are not as identifiable via interactive technologies. You will want to check regularly to see if there are questions or comments regarding the course content. As mentioned earlier, you may want to ask students to hold or even write down questions as they think of them, then pause after each segment of your lesson to ask for questions. Keep in mind, as body language that indicates someone wants to talk is not as noticeable, remote students may have a difficult time joining a lively conversation. Go out of your way to give your remote students the opportunity to present their views. If there's only one or a couple of students at the remote site, they often feel like an intruder and can fall into a passive observation role. Make sure you greet them at the beginning of every class and go out of your way to include them in the class. Questioning. An example might sound like this. At this point, let me stop for questions. Do you have any questions regarding blank? Learn your students' names and ask them content-related questions directly. Another example might be as follows. Let's pause for a moment for questions. Look over the notes and questions you've jotted down. Julian Cadillac, what have you written? She may have nothing, but if you continue to ask in this fashion, students will get the idea that you are giving them the opportunity to clarify content. To help moderate discussion, you might start with some quick ground rules such as, let's start the conversation with the Muskegon group and then we'll move to the Cadillac group. As questions come up, write them down so you're prepared for your turn. Site integration is very important because it brings physically separated classes closer together, which allows for a higher level of learning. Some suggestions on how to achieve site integration are: lecture by the instructor is a site integration activity. Adult brains can sustain focus during lecture for an average of 20 minutes at a time. If lecture takes place for relatively short periods, site integration can be effective if your lecture is followed by questions from the students and/or activities that allow students to process the new information in challenging and interactive ways. Research shows that class-building activities such as icebreakers, think, write, pair, share, pairs check, all create a positive learning environment and help students become acquainted with each other. This develops a positive class identity in which students experience mutual support and cooperation. Group work activities, when performed by students at both sites at the same time, can add to effective site integration. You can have groups with people who are in one location or groups that mix local and remote students. A couple of suggestions when doing group work is that you should consider using Google Docs or Blackboard groups. If the instructor sets up the groups, it will allow each group to coordinate their work with each other in one location and allow the instructor to view what the group is working on. One benefit of Blackboard groups is that a discussion board is part of each group. Feedback and assessment are very important to any classroom as it corrects misunderstanding and omissions, clarifies and reiterates concepts, moves skills to a higher level of understanding by reinforcing correct answers, and gauges the development of students. Some of the techniques may be different, but the same principles of evaluation apply to both face-to-face teaching and interactive technology teaching. Formative assessment is a process used by teachers and students during instruction that provides feedback to adjust ongoing teaching and learning to improve students' achievement of intended instructional outcomes. Types of formative assessment could include using the following strategies: muddiest point, which allows for students to explain what they do not understand. Pause and ask your students to write something down that they have learned in this session, and then ask a couple of students to share. Questioning. Announce that in 3 minutes you're going to pause and ask for questions. This allows some thinking time for students. Concept maps encourage students to make connections between concepts and is effective with visual learners. Summative assessment is typically conducted periodically. Midterm, final, is typically a formal assessment, test, large project or paper, case studies, role plays, essays, etc., typically graded or quantified, and is used to provide a quantitative measure of performance. You are able to build tests in Blackboard and also use rubrics for grading of a large project or a paper. A couple of troubleshooting items. Technology unavailable. Have a backup plan in case the technology fails. If Blackboard, Google, or any other technology is temporarily unavailable, how will you meet the same goal without the technology? A good option is dialing into a speakerphone at the remote location, which may allow you to connect and continue your class without much of an interruption. Any activities you have designed for class that include technology will have to be altered. You need to ask yourself how they can be used or altered if the technology is not available. Other site cannot hear you. Your system's microphone is muted. To unmute the system, press the mute button on the remote control. No audio at your site. The far site is muted. Ask the far site to unmute the microphone, or the volume may be turned all the way down. Turn the volume up using the remote control. You hear your voice echo during class. You are being picked up on the microphone at the remote site. Have the remote site turn their receiving volume down, or have the remote site mute their microphone. This concludes our session.